One of the proposed storyline ideas of Final Fantasy X was for Auron to be Jecht in disguise, while Auron himself was to be the final Aeon on the core of the current incarnation of Sin in the events of the game. The idea, however, was discarded due to the developers not wanting to see Jecht as a main character in the storyline. One may wonder how the story would have played out if Auron did become the final Aeon and help Braska defeat Sin, with Jecht being the lone guardian on Braska's side. How would it change the overall plot of Final Fantasy X? That is what we will take a look at today's episode of Alternate Timelines as we determine what if Auron had become the final Aeon. Before I begin, I would just like to note that similar to the last Alternate Timeline series video, this will be covered in two parts as I had a lot of ideas on how the storyline would pan out, which you will see as you continue watching. Certain striking elements will be left out, but that is by design. Anyway, let us commence. In order to begin this timeline, we will need to go back 10 years to when the trio of Braska, Auron, and Jecht embarked on their pilgrimage to defeat Sin. For the most part, the pilgrimage plays out the same as seen in the small fragments we discover from the spheres the trio leaves behind for the party to find in the original game. The fork in the road starts when the trio reach the Zanarkand ruins, where they debate on who should become the final Aeon. In the original timeline, Jecht becomes the final Aeon and defeats Sin, while making Auron promise to take Tidus to Spira to defeat Sin and live the life that he did, with Auron agreeing, and we see how the rest of the events play out until the end of the game. This alternate timeline, however, will begin with Auron disputing with Jecht after he makes this offer. No, Jecht. While your plan may be hopeful and inspiring, I think you should leave that task to me. I think it would only be sensible that you would be the one to watch over your son. Besides, you must reconcile with him as he is your family. As for me, there is nothing left in Spira. I have devoted my life to Braska as his guardian. As for you, reunite with your son and fight alongside him to defeat Sin. Defeat me. I will do my best to help you if I can once I become Sin. Before I continue, it was noted that the concept was for Auron to be Jecht in disguise, so we will keep that element in this story. Thus, Jecht will respond with the following. Fine, Auron, you will go with your plan, but I know that brat would punch me the first chance he gets. I can't just disappear and suddenly come back like nothing happened, you know. I am, after all, a blitzball star in my home city of Zanarkand. People will be asking questions and that will cause too many problems. I would rather let that kid take my place in the sphere while I watch over him. Very well, Jecht. You can disguise yourself as me until you are brave enough to face your son. Good luck. And with this brief interaction, Auron becomes the final Aeon for Braska and, along with Jecht as his sole guardian, meet Sin and defeat it. Braska promised Auron to take Yuna to Besaid, but in this timeline, that request goes to Jecht. The next change in the timelines occur after the defeat of Sin and the death of Braska. In the original timeline, Auron was consumed with anger after the return of Sin and the failure of the final Aeon, and thus he attempts to avenge his fallen friends by attacking Yunalesca, resulting in his death and his status as an unsent. In addition, by this time, he has already taken the form of Auron, but for the rest of the timeline, we will still refer to him as Jecht. However, Jecht does not share that same sentiment as he had made promises to both of his friends, to take Yuna to Besaid and to reconcile with Tidus, but he knows he cannot do it as himself due to how his son views him. The main reason he doesn't hold the anger Auron has is because he already accepted his fate as Sin and offered to become the final Aeon before Auron intervened. In a sense, Jecht was ready for this outcome of Sin coming back to life, and thus the thought of attacking Yunalesca does not cross his mind. He proceeds in fulfilling Braska's request of sending Yuna from Bevel to Besaid and spend some time with her. In a way, it is almost similar to raising Tidus, only he raises Yuna in a small village as opposed to a city with bright lights that never sleeps. Thus, Jecht has more of a low-down approach of raising Yuna, and she grows fond of him, seeing him as a father figure. His love for Blitzball still remains, so for the earlier years of raising Yuna, he plays for the Besaid Aurochs and brings her along when he trains at the beaches of Besaid. In fact, his athleticism and skill from playing for the Zanarkand Abes carries over to the Besaid Aurochs and helps them win the championship in his first year, quickly building his reputation as a blitzball star in Spira instead of just Zanarkand. Despite all of his successes, however, one thought was looming through his mind. That is how to bring Tidus to Besaid. Jecht realizes that during his life and experiences in Spira, he has not found one hint of where his Zanarkand was. So this results in him making the trip back to Zanarkand to visit Yunalesca to ask if she knows where his Zanarkand is. Yunalesca is initially confused, as they are currently in Zanarkand, but after some thought, she realizes which Zanarkand he refers to. Now, it is unsure if Yunalesca knows the exact location of Dream Zanarkand, but she does know that it is not accessible through human means and that Sin is the only connection between her and Dream Zanarkand's creation and her father, Yevon. Through this revelation, Jecht learns that in order to find his Zanarkand, he must find Sin, whom his friend Auron has now become, but is unsure of how to find it. So Jecht returns to Besaid and continues to watch over Yuna until a monstrous creature suddenly arrives in the shores of Besaid. Jecht realizes this is Sin coming for him and swims to sea, where he falls out of consciousness. Note that since Jecht is not an unsent, he does not have the ease of riding Sin as Auron does in the original timeline. Thus, when Jecht travels through Sin, he suffers the same effects as Tidus does in the game. The next time he regains his consciousness, he wakes up in the open sea, similar to Tidus in Besaid. However, in the distance, Jecht sees familiar architecture. The bright skyscrapers of Zanarkand are within sight, and he excitedly swims towards the city, where he notices that not much has changed since his departure a few years ago. Jecht explores the city and is surprised that nearly nothing has changed. He does notice that his face is on some of the sides of the buildings. This feeds his ego, as he smirks that people have missed him since his disappearance, but cannot reveal who he is in fear of Tidus finding out he is alive and is in Dream Zanarkand. Jecht then returns home and finds Tidus, but notices his mother isn't with him. At this point, the young boy notices the disguised Jecht and strikes up a conversation with him. "Hello, mister. What's your name?" "I am Auron." "Why are you here, Auron?" "I was actually sent here by Jecht to watch over you." Where is he? Is he gone?" "I am sorry, but he is not returning. He sent me here in his stead to watch over you." "I see. Well, I never liked my dad, but it's good to have company again." "Where is your mother?" "Well, she passed away not long after my dad disappeared. I've been alone ever since." "I see. I'm sorry for your loss. I will watch over you now." At this point, Jecht becomes Tidus' guardian under the guise of Auron. Now, there is no record on how the conversation between Tidus and Auron went on their first meeting, but it would be something similar to the conversation between Tidus and Jecht. Only when the two talk about the subject of Tidus' mother, Jecht would have likely attempted to hold back his feelings, as exposing them would reveal to Tidus who he truly is. Another factor to put in is that the faith of Bahamut would be present at the time as he was in the present timeline. It is likely that he started to watch over Tidus before the arrival of Jecht. Such a case would be similar in the original timeline when Auron was watching over Tidus in Dream Zanarkand. The faith of Bahamut's role does not change, however, as he still guides Tidus and Jecht to travel to Spira and defeat Sin, which they do when Sin returns sometime later. Similar to the last alternate timeline series, this will be divided into two parts, as we see the events of the game have already changed drastically before the timeline of the game itself begins. Tune in next Saturday to see part 2, where we will cover the changes that will happen in the events of the game itself. Let me know what you thought of the changes made in the comment section below. Did you agree with my interpretation of how the timeline would have changed? And as a bonus, how did you like my attempt at voice acting? Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed and consider subscribing if you want to see more related content. Other than that, this is Enzo signing out, and that, as they say, is that.